Thank you for downloading this podcast from the British Theatre Guide. For more information about British Theatre Guide, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.
Tara Arts is a London-based theatre company which has only had one artistic director, Jatinder Verma MBE, since it was formed more than 40 years ago, until he stepped down earlier this year. He will be replaced by Abdul Shayek, a director originally from East London who has spent the last 9 years based in Cardiff, initially working with National Theatre Wales and for the last 4 years running FEO, a theatre company that he formed in 2016. The week after his appointment had been announced, I spoke to Abdul and asked him to start with an overview of Tara Arts.
Tara Arts is a theatre company founded in 1977. Tara Arts is an award-winning space in Wandsworth. It's the first Asian, Black, ethnically diverse-led theatre company in the UK, and it's the only one that has a building of its own. It has delivered numerous world-class productions, worked with a range of different partners from grassroots to cultural powerhouses, and throughout its work, it endeavours to challenge the status quo, support and develop artists, and it has a particular focus on those of South Asian heritage. It creates world-class productions, tours internationally, and develops and delivers engagement, community, artist development programs.
Right. And you're only the second, in over 40 years, only the second artistic director after Jatinder Verma. So big shoes to fill there, aren't there?
Yes and no. I think Jatinder and what he did, absolutely remarkable and amazing. And many of us that have come after stand on his shoulders. And absolutely, we are grateful. But moving forward and thinking about the here and now, I'm really excited by the possibility and the opportunity. Really excited to see what we can do as an organisation in terms of pushing boundaries, thinking about what theatre is, who is making theatre, where it's being made, and who has access to theatre. And the idea of theatre as a thing, as a place. So really thinking about how the building, our building in Wandsworth, is porous and allows for people to come in and for work to get out and artists to kind of spill over into the high street. And so, yeah, there's something about all of that that's really, really exciting for me. We're at a point within the sector where lots of talk around reset and thinking about how our sector is structured and how it becomes more equitable, more representative. Those conversations are happening. And I think Tara, its history, what Jatinder did, puts us in a really great position to take up some of those conversations and lead and develop some ideas around the debate that we're having at the moment.
You've founded FEO Theatre Company in Cardiff 4 years ago, and you've been running that. But this, well, possibly the biggest difference is that you have a building with this. That it's not just a theatre company, you're actually running a building as well, so an actual theatre. How different is that going to be for you, do you think?
It's different, of course, because you have a space that you have to think about in terms of how you monetize it. How is it sustainable in terms of from an economic point of view? But it's equally, the exciting thing is you can try and test things. You can create a hub for artists, for the community to come to. And I think with FEO, that's always been the big challenge for us. We create really exciting, interesting work, but then once the project's done, it kind of dissipates and then the people dissipate and the energy dissipates. Whereas the exciting thing in this instance for me is that we can really build on the momentum and the energy that we create and really develop that and create, like I said at the beginning, a hub of artistic, creative activity and energy. Equally, exciting, interesting work we can bring to the building. Because the space isn't huge, I think we can take risk as well and really push boundaries in terms of thinking about what type of theatre we want to place in the building, what type of work, and really open up that space to enable a range of different styles, forms, artists to come in and make work with us.
It's a combination of work that you're creating as a company and work that's coming in, is it? It's going to be in that space?
Absolutely. It will be a combination. We will create our own productions. We will work with other organizations and look at co-pros, but at the same time, we'll be programming exciting, interesting work that can come and either talk to us or that can start its life at Tara and then go on and do amazing things elsewhere.
Yeah. In Cardiff, you've done some pretty big plays, with big themes, internationally well-known plays, things like The Mountaintop and The Island, Death and the Maiden. These are big conventional plays. You're now in this theatre where your first project, I believe, is a community project that's related to the current situation. So do you want to just explain what it is you're doing when you start at Tara?
Of course. Look, my background is I got involved in theatre through a youth theatre group. I got involved in theatre through Theatre Royal Stratford East Youth Theatre. My background initially was participatory arts and going into a range of different spaces, schools, communities, prisons, looking to use theatre and drama as a tool to engage people and enable conversations to take place around difficult themes, around current global political issues that needed to be debated and thought through. And so for me, I feel like I'm doing a bit of a full circle. I went to Wales. I worked with National Theatre Wales, spent 2 years there. And then I set up Theo, which has done, like you say, more conventional pieces. But we started the company with a big site-specific piece about migration and looking at Swarm. Kind of came out of a conversation with a group of young people who we were running a summer school with around being third, fourth, fifth generation migrants in Wales. And that first project was an amalgamation of professional actors, a group of young people who were fairly new to theatre, and a group of community adult performers. It was a site-specific piece where we took over buildings in different spaces across communities in South Wales. So we started off in Cardiff, and then we moved, or Cardiff Bay, and then we moved the show to Porth, which is in the valleys, Merthyr Tydfil, and then to Cwmbran. So those were the places that we went to, and we took over a different building in each of those places. So I am really interested in that space where you bring communities together, you debate or you place really important issues which need to be debated. And I don't think for me it's a departure at all. It's kind of very much in keeping with how I view making work and what I view as being really important. I think with everything going on in terms of COVID, the lockdown, the sector and where we're at, it felt like a really good initial project to, one, connect with the community, and for me to get out and talk to people, understand and really get to know the local landscape in terms of the place, but also the people, and respond to inevitably what has affected all of us at the moment, and some more so than others, and really thinking about what it has meant to lose someone during this really difficult period. So yeah, I think it was, for me, it was an idea that had been percolating. I had a conversation with my partner about two months ago, and her family used to go to a church where this lady who used to always be at funerals inviting people in. She was the kind of person who made sure you were okay when you came into the church. And this woman passed away during COVID, and no one was really there to celebrate her and send her off and bid her farewell. And so, yeah, the idea had been percolating in terms of how do we say farewell to those loved ones that we've lost, or the people within our communities that we've lost. Because during COVID, that's been one of the biggest challenges, I think, and that's been the thing that I think would have caused a lot of trauma for a lot of people. If I'd lost someone during COVID and had not had the opportunity to say the goodbye that I wanted to say to them, then I would have really struggled with that. So I think there was something about connecting that story with coming to a new place and thinking about how that can then manifest itself into a theatrical project, into an art project. And I think for me, there's a lot to think about in terms of how we manage and deal with supporting and making sure that people dealing with trauma, because it feels like at the moment that we haven't been through lockdown when you go out into Manchester or London or Cardiff, but we have just been through a really difficult period as a whole across the world. And I think that what we're asking people to do will definitely trigger stuff, and we just need to be aware of that. But equally, I think it could be a really poignant, really beautiful project and really help deliver that kind of final farewell, that an opportunity to really recognize those individuals and give them that space that they didn't get, I guess.
And of course, COVID has hit the Black and Asian and working class communities hardest. We find out, we hear in the media as well, hasn't it?
Absolutely, and that's a really good point. It has affected Black, Asian, ethnically diverse communities, working class communities, and it's quite literally shown us that the inequality in our society is killing people. There's no ifs, buts, or maybes. It's literally killing people because of the way we've structured our societies, or we've allowed our societies to be structured. So, it's a really great way to try and capture some of that. And the idea is that there will be some form of celebration within the piece, whether that's kind of right at the end and everyone comes together at Tara Arts, and there is some form of celebration at the end of it. Just to, again, it's in keeping with funerals, I guess, us celebrating a life and as they leave us. So, that's the idea. The plan also is to look at how we develop a structure which can then maybe move around, and whether we can do this in other places across the UK. It could be a really interesting idea to explore, but initially we have to do it in Wandsworth and within the local community. So that's the plan.
It sounds like whether you're doing a production like that or something like The Mountaintop, the work that you prefer to do has a social and a political dimension as well. It's not just something that people come along, watch, and then go home and maybe talk about. It does fulfill some social and political function as well.
Absolutely. Social justice is really at the heart of the work that I make. It's not to say I don't like going and seeing a piece of work which makes me feel happy and it's just a good night out. I'm absolutely not saying that that's something that I don't like, but from an artistic perspective and as an artist, I am very interested in kind of the social justice aspect of my work, and also the impact that the arts can have around those issues. I think it's really important because we create spaces where we can create empathy and an opportunity to present other people's perspectives. And I think that's a really important part of why I want to make the work, because sometimes we're only hearing one perspective. Take Swarm, for example. At the time, it's similar to what's happening at the moment. The government, David Cameron himself made that really famous comment about a swarm of people coming across the channel. And that's kind of what that is, where we took the name from, that particular statement that he made. And for me, it was really important to enable people within South Wales to understand, or even just for a moment, think about what it might feel like to have to leave everything behind and move and go through this horrendous, life-threatening journey to try and get to safety. That's all they're trying to do. They want to be safe. And so I think it's really important to do that. And I think theatre and drama allows us to do that in a way that other art forms might not allow us to do. And with Swarm, again, it was really important to take it out into communities where some of these debates were quite live and quite urgent. In Cardiff, in Wales, what was happening, or what has been happening, is people would arrive, asylum seekers, refugees would arrive, and then the council would ship them out into the valleys where it was cheaper. But obviously, that then was creating problems within the local community. And for me, it was really important to try and use theatre and the arts to enable that debate to happen, to enable some relationship building to take place so that people could understand just for a moment, even if it's a tiny moment, what it must feel like to have to do that.
Yeah, on the political theme, I noticed something that you'd said about when Tara was first formed back in 1977, the thing that kicked it off. In fact, I've seen a bit of a video on your on the Tara website. Jatinder Verma talks about this. It was originally started because of a murder, or a racist murder that happened in London back in 1976, and it's a similar event that's brought similar, although 1977 and 2020, they're very different times with different issues. It's a similar event that's brought similar issues to the fore. It's have things changed since 1977? You won't remember 1977. I remember it, but the issues are surely not quite the same. But it has brought out some of the same things, isn't it?
Well, I wasn't born in 1977.
No, I gathered.
But look, it's really sad to see. Over 40 years ago, this company was born out of a racist murder. And we're in 2020 and we're still dealing with racist murders. And I've got a child, and I would love for us, this generation, the next generation coming up, to be able to find a solution to this, because it can't continue. We have to make the changes that are necessary to make sure that our society is, one, more equitable, two, more representative, and offers everyone the same opportunities regardless of colour, class. And it's disheartening in some respects, but I think what I think is different this time round is the fact that there seems to be a groundswell of support and resistance to this, and a real consensus, overwhelming consensus that things need to change. I think there's no ifs, buts or maybes. I think there's a really clear consensus within society that things need to shift. They can't continue as is. I think the same is true of our sector, and I think the theatre, the arts, the cultural sector, on the one hand, we are the liberal left. But on the other hand, we also use that as a reason not to change. And clearly we need to change. And looking around the institutions, the cultural landscape, it's really clear that ecology isn't representative. It doesn't represent the Britain that I want to see. And I think, even within London, within Manchester, where there's large Black, Asian, ethnically diverse communities, I think there's still work to be done. But here's a real opportunity. And I think that's what really excites me. And I'm really keen that we don't allow this opportunity to be lost. We really need to seize the moment, really get behind creating the change. And it's really important to also make clear that organizations like Tara, organizations who are Black, Asian, ethnically diverse led, need to be at the forefront of some of this change in terms of supporting, consulting, advising the larger institutions on what needs to happen and how we can all work together to create this change. I think it has to be a joint effort. It has to be, and we have to work together. I did say in a recent article, the current language that's being used by government is problematic because it's too divisive, and we need to come together. We need to all work together. We need to pool our resources and really think about what kind of sector is born out of this crisis. And, unless people don't mean what they say, most people would agree we want a fair, equitable, equal, representative sector, one that really places social justice at its heart and really thinks about how we deliver that to everyone.
Yeah. The danger is that if you've got a company like Tara, you're working with the community, with a particular community of people on stage and in the audience, and that's you're just circulating the same message around people who already agree. So you're planning on working with companies that aren't doing what you're doing to help get the message across to them as well, are you?
Yes. So I think you're right. We, as arts organisations, we preach to the converted quite regularly. And actually change comes about when we can bring those that might not think like us into a space, and we can have a conversation and a debate, a healthy debate. And it's really important that it's a safe, healthy debate, but we need to have those debates in order to present different perspectives and then work together to try and achieve the change that we believe needs to take place. So again, examples of that in my work was when we did Mountaintop, and such an important piece saying some really, really important, poignant things about race and really kind of drawing to the fore those issues that exist. And the question of, how much has changed, I think you're kind of asking me the same thing here in terms of Tara 40 years ago today. Martin Luther King dying, and today we're still talking about civil rights in the US because for far too long it's been tokenistic, not just in the US, in the UK, it's been tokenistic gestures. So it's been token gestures offered up by the dominant culture. And actually, here's a moment, can we bring different groups of people together to debate these issues, understand them, and press forward our arguments, and do it in a way which enables them to understand and empathise with our viewpoints. Yeah,
and you made a start on that in Cardiff, which is not known for its ethnic diversity and its theatre community, which you've told me, and our sadly no longer with us reviewer from Cardiff, Othniel, who died earlier this year, he was saying the same thing in a lot of his reviews, that there wasn't a great deal of ethnic diversity, but you introduced you've made an attempt at introducing some of that in your work. So what are your memories of your nearly 10 years in Cardiff? What are the highlights of what you've done there?
Highlights? The first thing I did when I went to National Theatre Wales, it started off as a joke, and then I found myself on a pedal bike cycling across Wales, and that definitely will live long in the memory. Me cycling around with my rucksack and trying to meet people and understand Wales and get to know it and really get involved in the community. And so that was brilliant. And initially lots of people said that outside the big cities I would experience a lot of racism, and I didn't. People were really, really lovely, to be fair. It was when I was closer to Cardiff on the way back that I did experience some racism, and it was really sad to be fair, because I'd been literally across Wales. I cycled from Cardiff out west, then up the coast, up to the north, right over to Anglesey and across to Holyhead, and then back down through the middle into the Brecon Beacons and then down to Cardiff. And it was, but the whole 2-3 weeks that I was on the road was absolutely brilliant and a real eye-opener and a real opportunity to get to know Wales. In terms of other highlights, I think for me, the Mountaintop and putting that show on, and I think it was the third or fourth night when, as director, I kind of went, that's my job done. Up until that point, I was still passing on notes, and I just sat in the audience as an audience member and watched the show, and it made me cry, and I was just like, that was a real important, poignant moment for me. And it was really beautiful as a piece, but also the reactions from audience members in terms of how it affected them. And the performances were exceptional from both actors. So that will live long in the memory as well. What else? There's been so many really, really nice memories in Wales. I think one of the other things that completely threw me when I got there was people smiling at me and saying hello.
Coming from London, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. In East London, that never happened. No one looked at you, and if they did, it was for something, not to say hello. But yeah, it was. I struggled at first, wondering what people wanted, and then realised that people were just being nice. So that was nice. There's something about that warmth and friendliness which is quite lovely. I think the challenges in Wales is the conversations around race aren't nuanced enough and aren't developed enough because the opportunity in the space hasn't been provided, hasn't been given, hasn't been taken. And so that conversation needs to speed up, and it needs to be resourced well, and it needs to be given its space and time. So, yeah, that's Wales.
But now you're back in London, where you started off. But I notice you've got a lot of other projects that are started or due out at some point, apart from Tara Arts. So have you got time for a full-time job as well? You seem to have a lot of other things on. What else are you doing?
Well, there were couple of projects that I'd signed up to with Welsh National Opera, which I am going to do. One is a response to COVID-19, a project that I can't really talk about too much. It's not gone public yet. And another project that I can talk about is being the associate director on a new show, a new opera called Migrations, which has been directed by David Pountney and composed by Will Todd. That was supposed to take place this year. We would have been rehearsing, I think, now. But it's been delayed, and it's now next year. And again, I'll be taking that on, and I want to deliver that, absolutely. And then beyond that, a couple of projects with Theo that I am really struggling to give up. One is Orchard of Lost Souls, which is about the Somali Civil War, and it's by a lady called Nadifa Mohammed. It's been adapted for stage by actor-writer Aisha Antoine. We've been working on it for the last 3 years, so it's been in development for a while now. We have the money to put on the production, but at the moment, trying to find theatres, it's not difficult. People are saying yes, but it's just really hard to get any confirmation around what's possible just because of all the uncertainty. But that's going to happen, and I'll be working on that. And hopefully the plan will be, once the Welsh tour's done next spring, we'll tour it across England at some point. And then beyond that, there's a couple of other kind of ideas percolating around a virtual reality project, which is a bit of a personal project idea that stemmed from a conversation with my mother. She lived through the Bangladeshi War of Independence. She was in Bangladesh as the war raged on, and she's not in great health. And the 50th anniversary of the war will happen, will be next year, December 2021. And as part of that, an idea that was in development was to work with Bangladeshi women, collect their stories about the war, and in turn create a virtual reality experience to those stories. And that came from a thought process where I felt like we were taking something really important from them in terms of these stories, archiving them, of course, but we need to give something back in return. And it felt like giving them a VR experience could be a really cool exchange of generational differences, I guess, or it could be a really great exchange of experiences. So I think the exchange of the stories for a VR experience felt like a really good deal. whether they like it or not, I don't know. Let's see what happens. VR is a tricky one to get your head around, but that will be, hopefully, if all goes well, that will be available at some point in the future, and we will tour that around to as an exhibition rather than a theatre show. So yeah, lots going on. Do I have time? Yeah, absolutely I do. And I'm really raring to go. And I think as a portfolio artist, you're always spinning lots of plates, and it's important to be able to do that. And for me, that's what makes it really exciting. I think being able to explore, understand, make opera, because I'm fairly new to it, is really important, because I think it's a space that needs some fresh new ideas and new energy, needs some challenge. And I think a place like WNO, and prior to that I did some stuff with ENO last year, I feel like those spaces are open and interested and want to have those debates, those conversations.
You were working with Emma Rice, weren't you, at the ENO?
Yeah, that was really brilliant actually last year. Emma was great, and the whole team there were just absolutely brilliant. And it was a great introduction to opera, really. It was a really great introduction. And ENO have been brilliant, to be fair to them as well. So they've really supported and helped. And the whole team at ENO have been really great. So, yeah, it was great working with Emma. I think that was her first opera. So it was really nice to work with her. And I thought that the piece she made was brilliant, just because it was really accessible. You know, I invited all my mates from London. They don't go to the theatre much. And they loved it. They got it. And they were like, we got it. Because I was really worried that they might not. Because, you know, not a lot of them work in the arts. Well, none of them do, actually. So, it was really nice for them to come along and watch and really enjoy it. But that was good. And so, yeah, there's a lot happening. But Tara, I think there's lots of really good opportunities to do really interesting things. And we're having conversations with artists to understand what we can do to support them coming out of COVID. So we are going to be having sector-wide conversations. And also we want to develop a series of panel debates, whether that's in real life or online. But the idea will be to think about important current issues, big issues like climate emergency, like Black Lives Matter, and really think about how we can have a meaningful debate around that, an action-focused conversation.
That was Abdul Shayek, the new Artistic Director and Joint CEO of Tara Arts. For more information about Tara Arts, see www.tara-art.com. For more details about FIO, the company that Abdul formed in Cardiff, see www.wearefio, that's FIO.co.uk.
You've been listening to a podcast from British Theatre Guide. For more information, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.